People power growth, but recruiting and onboarding are expensive, exhausting, and absolutely overwhelming. I've been there, and it doesn't have to be this way. Welcome to Hire and Empower. I'm your host, Molly McGrath. Join me as we interview leaders who care about their teams and distill powerful lessons from them. This show is sponsored by H&E, helping organizations to find their best hire and empower them for success. Learn more at hiringandempowering.com. Okay, gang, today we are talking about how to negotiate like a CEO. I cannot wait to see how many downloads this episode gets because I know this is a hot topic. I would love to introduce our guest today, and get ready, get pen, paper, notes on your smartphones, and be certain to know that you are going to be taking some feverish notes. Our guest today, Jotham Stein, is also the principal of the law offices at Jotham Stein. And Jotham has more than 25 years of experience representing entrepreneurs, C-suite executive, board members, venture capitalists, private equity principals, investment bankers, as well as employees of companies of all types, shapes, and sizes. So welcome. Thank you for being our guest today, Jotham.
Thanks for having me on your show, Molly. Great to be here.
Absolutely. And I really want you to talk a lot about your book today, Negotiate Like a CEO, the ultimate guide for anyone moving up or trying to protect themselves in business. So give us a little bit of your backstory.
Well, I'm a lawyer and I've been doing this for 25 years. I live in Half Moon Bay, California, which is right near Silicon Valley. And I've been practicing law for more than 25 years. Now have offices in Chicagoland and New York as well. And principally what we do is we represent employees, entrepreneurs, executives, and I've been doing that for more than 25 years in employment, and the hiring, the firings, the good things, the bad things that happen. So that's sort of what I do. And based on my experience, I decided to write a book to help everyone out there and to have a good time writing the book. And that's called Negotiate Like a CEO. And happy to talk about it.
Absolutely. And you also have another book, and it's 9th edition, Executive Employment Law as well, correct?
That's true. That is a how-to guide for lawyers to represent entrepreneurs, executives, and employees. And it's actually coming out in its 10th edition in July, I think, of this year. And that's basically like when it's a how-to, a professional guide, you write something very for lawyers, and it has like 1,000 footnotes, and lawyers will love it. But this book that we're talking about now, I wrote for everyone, 0 footnotes, and it's written in a breezy and easy to read way. In fact, I included 59 fictional stories in there to make it really easy and fun for people to read. And when I say fictional stories, they're to underscore what I'm writing about, how to negotiate, what to look out for in employment, and so forth. And they're sort of genres. They're things that happen over and over again, but they're totally fictional. I wrote them at a Pete's Coffee House, but they happen over and over again. And what I mean by that is sometimes you go to a movie and you see an adventure movie. Sometimes you go to a movie and see a comedy. Sometimes you go and see a romantic movie. Well, these stories are themes and things and events that happen over and over again. And the whole point is to make this book really easy to read. There are contractions and other things in the writing of the book that make it easy and not formal at all. It gives you all the information you need, but is sort of exactly the opposite of a how-to book for lawyers. I hope everybody has a good time when they read it.
Oh, yes. And definitely that how-to book for lawyers. As you know, the majority of our listeners are lawyers or law firm C-suite. So you definitely want to go and get that Executive Employment Law now coming out in its 10th edition, because that's a question I get all the time. I'm like, not my gig. I don't touch it with the 10-foot pole, consultant attorney. So I'm delighted to hear that you have that book, and bravo on coming out with the 10th edition as well.
Thank you. That one's published by, if you have lawyer listeners, that's published by LexisNexis, which is the great behemoth in the publishing world for how-to books. And you can go to their website if you're a lawyer. And I think you can buy it on Amazon too, but certainly LexisNexis has its own, it's like an industry for lawyers. And so they'd be welcome to go there and look for that book as well.
Awesome. Oh, congratulations. Everybody knows LexisNexis. Right. Absolutely. Okay. So talk to us a little bit about what Springboard, what the launching pad was for this book. I love the cover on Negotiate Like a CEO. Talk to us about the how-tos of how to get ahead with lesson learned from top entrepreneurs and executives. Give us a skinny.
Well, the most important thing that you can do, that as the new employee can do, whether they're at the newbie level where they've just gotten out of college maybe, or all the way up to the C-suite level and to the CEO, is to negotiate and think like the CEO, which is why the title is like that. And what that means is protecting yourself in employment wherever you can and wherever you have leverage. And so certainly every CEO, or not everyone, but most CEOs have what I call protective prenuptial agreements, professional prenuptial agreements, which is nothing more in their employment agreement than a severance agreement negotiated on day one. So these CEOs come into a company and they negotiate with the board. They say, if you fire me, which you can do anytime, you at least have to pay me some severance. You have to protect my equity, give me some of my stock, accelerate the vesting of my stock, give me medical payments and COBRA payments and so forth. So they're thinking about the end, even though everybody hopes the company is going to go well, and nobody wants things to go poorly. And similarly, everybody throughout the hiring hierarchy should think about that if they have any leverage. And often, frankly, people that are just starting out from college don't have the leverage, but sometimes they do, depending on where they are, what industry they're going into. And now every day, employers are trying to hire. So there's a market out there. And so even the beginning employee, and I'll use coders as an example. If you code software or you code hardware, the software that drives hardware, there's a need for you out there. And even some of these people coming out of college that know how to do that, they can get some protection. And what I mean by that is, let's say equity is important to them. They might be able to get a 1-sentence line in their offer letter, their 1-page offer letter that says, if you fire me, you'll vest me, you'll accelerate the vesting of my equity for 1 year, period. And that's the kind of protection they might want should things not go well. And remember, we all hope things go well in employment. And sometimes they go well for years. And then after a number of years, it doesn't work out and things go downhill. So the best thing that you can do to answer your question, to come back, is to protect yourself if possible.
Yeah, I love that. Begin with the end in mind is what I'm hearing, because so often I'll hear from people, majority of my practice is staffing and recruiting. And when it comes time for the offer letter, I will constantly hear from the employer or C-suite, what if? They're already having a level of anxiety about, what if this thing goes south? What if I have to fire them? What if they quit? What if they steal my toys and leave, and all my IP and all that? And when you were speaking, I was thinking about it. Well, if I'm an employer, I might have scarcity mentality and think, whoa, I don't want people listening to Jotham and buying his book and hearing how to negotiate their agreements up front and be educated and empowered and all that. But part of me is thinking, how great to not have to carry the whole load as an employer or a C-suite, and actually have an educated, empowered, brand new employee, independent contractor, what have you, coming on, and having it be a two-sided relationship. What about this? What about that? And everybody using their critical thinking right from the start, which I would think, boy, oh boy, that would start off a really phenomenal relationship from day one, and not having all the pressure on the leadership team.
That's for sure. And it also frees up the employee to be the best they can be, because they don't have to worry, particularly in very large, mature organizations. They don't have to worry about who might be stabbing them in the back. I mean, nobody wants to get fired, don't get me wrong. So, but they don't have to worry as much, and they're free to act in the best interest of the organization. I'd also say many mature companies, not all, but quite a few, have what's called ERISA severance plans already in place. Certainly for their C-suite, but often for many executives below that, and many times even for all their employees. And what an ERISA plan is, it says we have a plan, and if you qualify under the plan, you've been a certain number of years there at the company, and you've made a certain amount of salary, you've been a certain level of employment, you get X if we fire you without cause, as long as you sign a release and the company wants the release so that they never have to worry about that ex-employee again. So those companies are doing exactly what you just said. They're trying to have, for multiple different reasons, they have these ERISA plans, but one of the things they're doing is trying to tell their workforce, listen, even if it doesn't work out here for one of many reasons, you're still going to be protected on the downside. And there are many companies that have them, particularly very mature ones. Now, the less mature ones, what I mean by that is that they're newer in their life cycle. They startups or mid-level companies do not have such plans, but at the highest level they do. For one of the reasons is for exactly what you just mentioned. The company's point of view, the organization's point of view, is to empower their employees to an extent that they feel protected, so that they can be free to work in the best interest of the company. And nobody wants to be stabbed in the back, don't get me wrong, but they have to worry less about it, or organizational change. There are reorgs that happens all the time, things like that. So the company you hire onto in the beginning may not be the same company 3, 4, 5 years down the road. I'd also say the interesting thing about what you were saying, what companies might not like to listen to Jotham, because he's empowering employees. I got that part of it, but the interesting thing is at the C-suite level. So I face this issue all the time. Somebody's coming in as a VP or an EVP, and they ask me, should I tell the CEO who I'm negotiating with that I have a lawyer? And my response is, well, you have to maximize your returns, your personal returns, when you're negotiating with the company. But think of it this way. How shrewd will that CEO think you are if you come to negotiate with him or her and you don't have a lawyer helping you out negotiate the contract that your CEO negotiated? So if you take that one, now that sort of mindset might not be true below a certain level, because perhaps a company doesn't want to empower all its employees in this way, but sometimes it is in the ways that I just described at some of these mature companies. Now, mature companies mature meaning they've been around a long time. They've had a lot of experience. Many of these are public, they're larger companies, but they do things sometimes not so well organizationally. But why are they doing this? You want to ask yourself, and the answer is in part because they want their employees to feel that this is a good environment to work in. It's a positive environment, even if things don't go well. Even if things don't go well, we'll protect you and takes care of you.
So, it's interesting. This morning I was speaking with a client, and we are working on an offer letter for a new employee. And he says to me, and I'm going to butcher his name, I'm not going to say properly, but the late owner and founder of Zappos, he had put in all of his offer letters, hey, if things don't work out great here and you decide it's not a good fit, I decide it's not a good fit, I'm going to give you $1,000 exit severance. And he's like, you know what? I think I'm going to put that in my offer letter. I really, really like that. That takes off a lot of the pressure. And I just love that. I thought that was very fun and creative.
Yeah, so this is an example. That's an example of somebody who decided that everybody should have it because it's the right thing to do, or because maybe it makes the company go better, work better, because people don't feel the pressure. When things are, when an employee is being forced out or pushed out or is given a performance improvement plan, which, as you know, it's often the kiss of death in employment. There's a tremendous amount of pressure that they feel, stress, and we all know that with certain exceptions, people don't do so well under stress, and who would want that? So this is a very, very enlightening thing this individual did.
So tell me a little bit about, you have all this knowledge, you have all these clients amongst your career. What got you to the place of compiling all this and writing a book?
Well, two things. One is I realized that we all spend so much time in employment, both from the company's point of view and from the individual's point of view, yet we know so little, or most people know so little about what actually happens, what to look out for, what are the good things that can happen in employment, what are the bad things that can happen, what are the other interests, what does the company know, what does the employee know, what are their concerns. And I've been doing this for more than 25 years and seen so much. Now, I haven't seen everything, because every week I learn, or I always say to myself, wow, that's something new. I never heard that before. I can't believe it. But I have so much experience that I wanted to help people, from the new person just getting out of college all the way up to the C-suite level. They don't know often what questions to ask, what the tea leaves are, and so forth. So I wrote it for that purpose, just to really help people, and also because I wanted to have a fun time writing. So that was the 59 stories that I sat in the Pete's and just Pete's Coffee and wrote those stories. They're little vignettes, right? 3-4 page stories to underscore what I've written about. And they're fun to write. And I think everybody will have a fun time reading them. And I tried to make very interesting characters and very interesting characters doing interesting things. So traveling, doing sports, things like that.
And are the stories a mixed bag between the entrepreneur, the C-suite, and the employee, so you can hit each perspective?
Oh, yes. There are stories with even higher than that. Venture capitalists hiring new CEOs to get rid of a whole C-suite team. There are stories about mid-level managers. There are stories about just anybody, the regular employee who's just looking to move up in their career, and from positive and negative perspectives. So there's a story, for example, on the positive side about a regular non-C-suite office person, not even just very talented, who does very well, makes a ton of money in an IPO, and is able to buy a very large house. And then there's a story about that same level of individual in the org chart, let's say mid-level newer employee who gets a performance improvement plan, and what you learn from that. From the C-suite level, similarly, there's the positive story about what executives do and how they succeed, and the kind of money they make when their company is sold. And then there's a story about what I call special projects, which is how senior C-suite employees are often managed out of a company for any number of different reasons. So the positive and the negative at all the different levels of employment. That was the whole point, is to help everybody, because these themes happen over and over again at all the different levels of employment, whether you're at the lowest level, just a new hire in the org chart, or all the way up to the C-suite level.
Fantastic. And what would you say, give us a few drive-by tips, value bombs in regards to how to negotiate for like a CEO?
The first is to go into every situation with your eyes wide open, to know what company you're hiring into, why you're getting the job, and to find out as much as you can about who your boss and your boss's boss is going to be. The second is, if you have leverage, to use that leverage to negotiate something protective for yourself. So if things don't go well, you are protected, as I discussed before, whether that's a one-line sentence in an offer letter, or it's a 15-page document, employment agreement. The third is to realize that there's a big world out there. So there are a lot of jobs, particularly now, and so you should try to pick as wisely as possible. Now, your corporate clients aren't going to like this, but if things aren't working out, or sometimes they will actually, but if things aren't working out, your boss doesn't want you there, whatever it is, then reincarnate yourself and go find another job somewhere else, or change careers, or whatever is necessary to make you the best employee you can be. Now, why I say employers might like to hear this, and I'll digress for a moment. This book could be great advantage to anybody, like a general counsel, anybody on the C-suite level, so they can understand what other people might be negotiating, what the people on the other side might negotiate. Because remember, they wear two hats. One is they want to negotiate it for themselves. Then when they turn around, they have to negotiate against somebody who's asking for something. So now missed the point I was going to make, but anyway.
You said employers won't like it if an employer's not happy and going somewhere else.
Thank you. Thank you. There's often in employment for companies, they waste a lot of time and energy and money with what I'll call passive aggressive managers who want to manage somebody out, and they don't actually know how to do it and won't do it forthrightly. And so they make the world very tough for their subordinate. And if the subordinate knows how to read the tea leaves, they realize it's getting worse and worse. And really their manager doesn't want them there. But there's a tremendous amount of lost time in the organization for something like that. And what you often see is that the subordinate, if they're well coached or well advised, or they have a lawyer that sort of knows how to read the tea leaves for them, they go to the manager and they say, okay, I want to be here forever. But you know what? I know you don't want me here. So if you offer me a professional separation agreement or a severance agreement, I'll go and get a job somewhere else. And very often, not always, but very often the manager like breathes a sigh of relief and they say, okay, we'll send you one from HR, or what do you want? Or because the manager doesn't want them there, but hasn't been able to get rid of them, if you will, and doesn't fire them. So there's all this lost time and energy that's addressed in the book, how to negotiate a separation agreement, when to do that, what tea leaves to read. And from why I said the company might be interested is, and I don't know if there's any data on this, but if you spend time at a mid-level company or a mature company or even a startup and try to figure out how much time is wasted by managers trying to get rid of subordinates, it may not be economically rational, but they're the manager and they want to force them out, but they don't have the straightforward conversation, either because their personality is such that that's the way they handle it, or because there are other organizational interests that might create a problem for them. So they don't want to go to they don't want to have to compete with the other organizational interests, but yet it's better for everyone if there's a separation given, a release received, and the company can go run itself like it wants to and maximize its abilities, meaning, it's a company, so it's not a person, but maximize the return for the company. And the individual themselves is better off because they have a softer landing with a separation agreement, and they hopefully get a job. The next job is one that's better for them, that they enjoy more.
And as you're saying this, so often I see it in even small, mid-sized companies that are beyond startup, that they do experience that exact fact pattern that you just laid out there, where they don't know how to let go of someone. They don't know how to fire them or have the crucial conversation. And so they do exactly that, everything to force a person out. And sometimes the employee is completely clueless of it. So they just work harder in the wrong direction.
Right.
And as you're speaking, I'm thinking, if I was an employer and I had somebody in this spot who was empowered and educated with the information that you are providing us with today, and then you come to the manager or mid-level, whatever it might be, or maybe directly to the entrepreneur, because I see it for people that do not have that middle tier management or that C-suite, and they come and have a really upfront, crucial conversation with you. That's somebody that I would absolutely write a glowing letter of recommendation. They weren't a good fit for the position, but they had the courage and the leadership to orchestrate and facilitate the conversation. There are so many win-win-wins, because I tell people in this day and age, you have to be so careful with uneducated employees who run off of emotions only, whether it's right down to the interviewing process. I've had people that have gone ballistic during the interviewing process when they don't get offered the job. And people are not afraid to go online on social media, Google AdWords, whatever, and write a bad review about their experience at a gas station. You think they're not going to do this when their livelihoods are attached to it? So there's so much at stake for the business owners, for the managers, for the C-suite, if they are dealing with uneducated potential or existing employees.
So just think how that same employee who gets fired, if that ever happened, from the individual you talked about earlier, who gave $1,000 to everybody, puts it in the letter. Is that person going to go and write nasty things on the internet? And now if there's a release there, they certainly won't. But even if there isn't, and it's the same thing if you go up where somebody has a separation agreement negotiated in day one. That's what we call a professional prenuptial agreement. If the company comes to terminate that person is not working out. It's special. They can put them in special projects, or they just walk in the office and say it's not working out. That person already has the protection. From their point of view, things are going to go much better, because they're going to say, hopefully they'll stick out their hand and say, listen, I think you're making a foolish decision for the company. I think I'm great. But you know what? You don't want me here. So just pay me what's in the separation agreement, vest me the equity that's in the separation agreement, pay my COBRA premiums, and I'll go happily. And that allows the company and the manager doing the termination to do exactly what you just said, which is, I can write you a letter, I can support you, and it goes much more smoothly. I want to say nobody likes to be told that they don't belong anymore. Nobody likes to be fired, but in that circumstance, it's so much easier for both parties, both the company and the employee. I would have to say too, when I'm on the other side advising a CEO, so we do at my firm represent a number of companies. Often the executive who's been forced out will then come and say, hey, you did such a great job, why don't you work for the company? I always tell that CEO, if they're terminating somebody below on their C-suite, and even the C-suite people who are terminating below, get that person that you're just terminating, give them a separation agreement, get a release so the company's free. And you know what? Go try to help that person get a job across the street, because they'll tell me all sorts of stuff. We don't like them, blah, 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 blah. But the answer is, for the company's point of view, if you get that employee you just terminated a job across the street, they're not likely to come and create problems for you, either on the internet or with social media, or in our lawsuit or an arbitration, because they got a new job that they're happy with and they want to focus on that. They don't want to focus on the negative of being let go.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had that situation earlier this week with two family law attorneys in Northern Michigan. And one of the candidates that applied had worked for attorney A. Attorney B is best friends with attorney A. They're running the same legal circles, what have you. And first question he says is, hey, if I call this attorney, this is my buddy, why are you no longer working there? And the story that the candidate gave was wonderful. We had the differences with the C-suite, professional law firm administrator is what they use the term they use. And we just had a conflict in personalities and the way to do things. I left great. I got along fantastic with the attorney, your buddy, but she was never around. She wasn't managing the firm. She was outgrowing and writing books and podcasts and all that. And it was fantastic, because when he did his due diligence and called she's like, oh, in a heartbeat, if I was a small firm like you were, and it was just, I would hire him again as a paralegal, but my PLA and him clashed heads, what have you. They left great. She'll give a glowing letter of recommendation. Just their way to manage a file was very, very different, and we weren't going to get past it.
So that's a perfect example of an excellent separation on both on a professional level for both the employer, the lawyer, that firm who left, and the employee, and frankly for the person who's doing the hiring. So that's the way you hope it to happen. But unfortunately, as we know, as you must know, that that's not always the way it happens, and there's a lot of time, energy lost. And I've seen some lawyers who actually advise executives and entrepreneurs have some doozy of a termination with their own group. So and you sit there and you say, is this economically rational why you're having this fight? Why are you doing this? So whether on either side, regardless of who you're representing. So I'm glad to hear that that it worked out well, at least for your lawyers in Northern Michigan.
Yes. Yeah. I hear it all the time, and I hear horror stories as you do as well. So thank you for writing this book. Listen, if you are an existing employee, you're somebody who is in a position where your managers may be not so happy with the results that you're producing. You're an employee listening who is actively seeking for employment, C-suite, business owner, what have you. Absolutely, positively, we're going to have here in the show notes for how you can go ahead and get a copy of Jotham's book here. I am going to have your website. Tell us how to get to your website, negotiatelikeaceo.net.
negotiatelikeaceo.net. You can learn more about the book, more about me, and some of these fictional stories. There's 2 of them on there. You can read them. And if you decide to buy the book, you can press the button, buy button at negotiatelikeaceo.net. Or if you wanted to buy the book directly, you can just go to Amazon. Or you can Google Negotiate Like a CEO, and it will come up, and it probably comes up as Amazon and then Barnes and Noble, some bookseller, but you could press the button right there.
Great. Yes, it's in Kindle and paperback as well. So thank you so much for being our guest, for writing this body of work. I cannot say enough about the book cover. It is absolutely beautiful. I just even looking at that, I don't know one person that could not resonate and see themselves as a rugged individual is standing out there on their own island.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, Molly. It's been great talking with you.
Okay, until next time, continue being leaders leading leaders. We've reached the end of another impactful conversation on the Hire and Empower podcast. Whether this was your first episode or you're a longtime listener, I know you can tell I have passion for people. Whether you're a business owner, employee, executive, or hiring manager, I understand the situation you're in. Hiring, onboarding, and leadership is expensive, exhausting, overwhelming, and if that's not enough, it's also time-consuming. My friends, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a team at H&E that has your back. For over 25 years, they've transformed over 4,000 law firms into efficient, effective, profitable assets for their business and made it fun to come to work again. Check out our Smart Hire solution, our employee leadership program, and the 66-day law firm turnaround at hiringandempowering.com.